All righty. Welcome everyone to our Women in Web3 panel. Thank you to StartOut and Digital Undivided for putting this on. My name is Natalie and I will be the moderator for tonight. So a little bit about StartOut. Our mission is to accelerate the growth of the LGBTQ community and drive its economic empowerment, building a world where every entrepreneur who is LGBTQ has equal access to succeed and lead in entrepreneurship. We have over 300 mentors, 300 investors, 50 plus community events every year, online and in person, and millions of social media impressions. And thank you to our sponsors, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Amazon, and everyone else. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Patricia, and she'll let you know about Digital Undivided if you've never heard of them before.
Thank you, Natalie. Digital Undivided is the leading nonprofit leveraging our data, programs, and advocacy to catalyze economic growth for Latina and Black women entrepreneurs and innovators. Our goal is to create a greater world where all women own their work and their worth. Our mission moves the entrepreneurial system forward to increase funding, access, opportunities for women of color in business and innovation. We were the first to debut authoritative research on the state of Latina and Black women founders with the Project Diane report. The legacy of Project Diane inspires our expanded research efforts conducted by women of color and focused on women of color in entrepreneurship and the businesses they lead. Our programs such as START, Big Pre-Accelerator, Breakthrough, Do You Fellowship, and our new C-Suite mobilize community, best-in-class resources, advisory, and investment to support women of color founders at all stages of their entrepreneurial journey, as well as their funding journeys. I'll pass it back up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. So tonight we're going to be having myself as the moderator, and we'll be hearing from Joe, the CEO and co-founder at NiftyLit, and Natasha, co-founder and COO at VegaX Holdings. I'll let you all have a moment to introduce yourselves. A little bit about me first. I am a founder, interim director of CryptoFem. We are a community of women and femme-identifying people of all experience levels in crypto. And the goal of our organization is to grow into a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and create more representation for women and femme-identifying people in crypto. And I'll pass it over to Joe.
Hi, everybody. My name's Joe. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I founded a company earlier this year called NiftyLit, and we publish literary works on blockchain as non-fungible tokens, or more commonly known as NFTs. We launched this past summer, and we've now signed over 100 writers and artists who want to publish with us. So yeah, coming into the space from the NFT arena. Thanks, Natalie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natasha Banz-Gopal. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at VegaX Holdings. And what we do at VegaX is we build the technological infrastructure to help traditional financial firms enter into Web3 in an easier way. So basically, we're building the bridge to connect the old world of finance with the new world of finance and what that looks like in the evolving world of Web3. I've been in crypto since 2017, and I've been an entrepreneur since 2013.
Thank you all. Patricia, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So my name is Patricia Diaz. I am the head of partner and founder success here at Digital Undivided, and I help founders once they've graduated from the various programs I mentioned with anything that they may need in their entrepreneurial journey.
Awesome. This is an event coming up November 9th. So if this looks interesting to you, save the date. And thank you to everyone who is here for joining us. I think that we have probably at least over 100 people on right now. And we're going to have a really good discussion just about what Web3 even is and why it is so important for, you know, everyone to learn about it and to participate in it, especially women, since we're underrepresented. Oops. Let me just leave it on here and just dive right into the questions. So I will start with Natasha. What is Web3 and how is it different from how the internet is today?
Great question. So I'll first say this by caveating that Web3 is still evolving, right? So there isn't this world where we're like, this is Web3 and it's absolutely all finished and it's here. So that's the first caveat. The second caveat is kind of looking at the history of, I guess, the stages of web. 1.0, 2.0, and what we're talking about, which is 3.0. So when we talk about 1.0 and 2.0, we're talking on 1.0, we're talking about just the base of the internet. The internet was invented and now you can do things online. So basic connectivity. When we talk about Web 2.0, we're talking about really the added layer of connectivity that comes as the result of social platforms and larger organizations that essentially make Web 2 centralized. And what that means is there are key organizations like your Googles, your Metas, your Amazons that are primarily responsible for, let's call it 98% of the activity that happens in Web 2. That's kind of what defines Web 2. That second layer of connectivity, enhanced connectivity, which was kind of driven by social platforms and online purchase behavior. As we look at Web 3, we're kind of finding this culmination of Web 1 plus Web 2, and then adding this layer of seamless connectivity. And when we talk about that, it's kind of just this fancy way of saying, what does the internet look like when we take away these centralized entities, your Googles and your Amazons and your Metas that are running a lot of things day to day? What happens when those no longer are corely responsible for everything happening on the internet, and there are other smaller groups of people or individuals who are responsible for certain things? This is what we're doing when we look at Web3. It's really this ownership of your data, your ownership of your activity, and how you as an individual can own all of those elements and potentially monetize that. And that's something that we're seeing that's very different in this new age of Web3. So the things that I'd say when people talk about Web3, we're talking about a decentralized world, a world where we're moving a bit more into this new age world of internet where everyone has access and power, and this world where we rely on technology to really tell us whether or not things are operating in the way that they're supposed to be, rather than another intermediary or a person. So that's kind of, I think, the progression of Web3 and a little bit around how we look at Web3 at its very early stages right now. But that is also my opinion and the way that we come in at it. I'm sure Joe also has some thoughts on how she characterizes Web3 as well, specifically on the NFT space as well.
Yeah, Joe, what are your thoughts about Web3 and NFTs?
Yeah, sure. That was like such a wonderful response. And I think, you know, that Web3 is such sort of like an elusive term, and it's very much like an umbrella term. And I think sort of categorizing it in the way of like we're moving towards decentralization is a great way to think about it. And I think that one thing that sort of really resonates with me as a creator and a creative person is the idea that we're able to sort of commodify creativity in this way that's never been done before. It has never really been done digitally, especially in Web 2, where if you look at sort of the centralized model for monetization of creative content, it's all sort of based on this influencer economy and on advertisements. And so now we have this ecosystem on the blockchain where people can interact in a new way. Peer-to-peer transactions is how it's, you know, commonly called, but you can think of it, you know, certainly in terms of cryptocurrency, but you can also think about it in terms of between people who are creating content and putting it on the blockchain and the consumers of that content or the fans, and not having to be tied to a central distributor like Amazon, who previously maybe people would publish their books with, or things like that. So that's really sort of like where I think the huge potential is sort of more direct relationships between people on a digital, in a digital ecosystem.
Yeah, and one thing that I would add to the conversation is, you know, if you think about when the internet first started, everything was Web 1. And what that means is everyone was a consumer online. Only developers created websites, and developers were not necessarily influencers. I don't think influencers really existed until blogs became a thing. Whereas now, you know, with Web3, people can still have blogs and they can still be creators online, but we cut out that corporate middleman. So like on YouTube, all these influencers are getting, you know, if they go viral and they're popular, they get paid a lot of money, but it's pennies compared to what YouTube makes off of them. So one other caveat off of this, how can Web3 create innovation across various industries? And maybe you can, maybe Joe, you can start with your experience for your startup.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I was, when I started NiftyLit, I was actually working in venture capital while I was finishing a master's degree in creative writing. And I was sort of like feeling very stuck as an emerging writer, going like, okay, the sort of model that exists in publishing today is you hope to get published in various places online, and that maybe an agent finds you, and then you land a book deal, and then what happens is sort of what you were just saying, Natalie, where like you're giving over like a huge portion of your earnings to these centralized distributors within the publishing ecosystem, so the big publishing houses. And I think this, you know, a lot of parallels with music. And so I was seeing what was happening with some of the companies in my VC's portfolio that were in the sports NFT space, and what was happening with digital baseball cards and that sort of thing. And I was just like, why are we not publishing writing on blockchain in this way, where if somebody has, you know, a decently large following, they can publish a story as an NFT, and then they can earn creator earnings directly from that, instead of basically the old model of giving away your content for free, hoping that you'll be able to sort of enter this very established industry in which you give up a lot of your creator earnings.
Yeah, definitely. Anything you want to add on to that, Natasha?
Yeah, I'd say that there's probably, I mean, it's ripe for innovation, right? So anytime we kind of hit these cycles of something new or a big kind of opportunity where there's kind of this gap between whether or not people understand it and people like balls to the wall building everything, that means it's ripe for opportunity. And I think what we're looking at Web3, it's really about, and especially in our world in Vega X, we're very focused on how do we bridge the gap between the old and the new, right? So we're not saying that, you know, we should blow up all that we know and that traditional financial services or traditional way of thinking about things should go away. But what we are saying is that if everything moves into this world of Web3, the way we think about things has to fundamentally change. Everything becomes a tech company in Web3. And that's a concept that people are starting to really understand now, where especially in this world of fintech, right? Fintech is no longer a thing. Finance is tech. And that's where we're at, right? And everything is becoming tech. Once you put something on the blockchain, once you create a smart contract, once you're actively using online tools to engage with this economy, this industry, this service, it's a tech tool. So we're kind of hitting this progression or this new world where a lot of the innovative opportunities are thinking, what is ripe for change in this old world? And how does Web3 present this opportunity to make it even better, right? And that's what we see specifically in the financial services side of things. Things are very complicated and traditional, very clunky. Yes, they still use fax machines. Like these are things that still happen day to day. And there is no reason for it, aside from the fact that everyone's used to it and nobody's moved to change, right? When we get to Web3 and everybody is operating in Web3, the creator economy has moved to Web3. People won't interact with you until you actually have like your .eth like address or whatever it is. Those become core things that people have to figure out. So I think that a lot of the innovative opportunity can come from sparking an idea of what's not working or what doesn't work as well as it should right now. And what does that look like as we move things into this world of Web3 and move things into this very tech-enabled world? And I think that's where people will start seeing a lot of innovation opportunities and a lot of ways that they can actively now start learning so that you can kind of build with it. Because as I said, very much in the infancy of this stuff. We're still very much building a lot of the infrastructure for it, which means it's a wonderful time for people, especially women, to get in, learn as much as possible, absorb as much as possible, and see where you want to kind of like make your impact or, you know, get your chops wet with this kind of world.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy what's possible with this new technology. And, you know, one thing that I see a lot of among beginners and crypto curious people, as far as misconceptions go, is this thinking that NFTs specifically, I know we're talking about Web3, but I think this is pretty relevant. You know, there's this idea that NFTs are a fad or just like a trend. You know, they're these arbitrary digital collectible items that will, you know, go up in value if they become popular, or if they don't, then they'll go down. But NFTs are like so much more than that. I think the use cases for NFTs are, you know, they can be, since the blockchain is immutable, everything is recorded on the ledgers. They can function as, you know, proofs of purchase, proofs of sale, proofs of membership to something, basically anything that a digital PDF can be. An NFT can be that for every industry. And, you know, this of course carries over to Web3 since that's online. The next question is, like with any new technology, it can be intimidating to get started. Natasha, how did you first learn about Web3, and what were some steps you took to get started?
Yeah, so what I like to say to everyone is just dive in. Like, this world is moving so fast, things are changing and new things are happening like every hour on the hour. So like, you kind of just have to like jump in and start trying to doggy paddle. So that's the first thing, like just try to swim. And I say that to say I got into the world of Web3 through crypto, and I got in through crypto around 2016, 2017. And even figuring that out was difficult. But now I have a company that deals with kind of working with crypto and the future of what that means, right? And this was just a few years ago. So I think it's important that people dive in and start to experiment with the things that you're interested in, whether that is, you know, being a part of a community. There are all sorts of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, that would likely love to have you based on what you're interested in, what their vision is, and what they're building. So there are things like that that is a great opportunity to learn. Buying your first NFT, getting on OpenSea and learning things there. That's kind of another way to kind of dive into this community. Finding people who are also new to this and trying to figure out how to get in, and sharing resources. A lot of those things help really get wrap your head around what's going on. It's very easy to talk about the concepts and like be hit over the head day by day with what's blockchain and what's crypto and Bitcoin and all of this. But until you actually start using it or trying to enter into this economy, a lot of it really does go over your head. So I encourage people to kind of just get involved in some shape or form, ask questions of people who seem like they're very involved, and find out. And I think in that way, and that kind of like curiosity will help you find something that you're interested in this space. There is no shortage of opportunity in this space. It's more so about what you're interested in, and can you kind of dedicate yourself to being able to learn and be a part of the growth of this industry as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone listening, you know, I'm sure there's a broad range of experience levels when it comes to crypto and blockchain and Web3. So as you have any questions, you know, as they come up for you as we're talking, feel free to put them in the questions tab, and then our panelists will answer them at the end. Question for Joe. How do you see Web3 evolving in the future, and why is it critical for women and/or underrepresented groups to learn and get involved?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think that I have this sort of theory that, right now when we talk about Web3, Natasha alluded a little bit to this, but like there's this sort of shared lexicon in Web3 that can be very intimidating. Like I wasn't old enough, but probably at the dawn of the internet, people were saying like, hey, have you heard of this new HTTPS protocol? And like, so I'm sure that there's like in Web3, we're all saying all of these like acronyms and stuff, and it's like probably very confusing. And so I have this theory that as Web3 or blockchain technology gets sort of baked into, traditional industries like music or finance or publishing or what have you, that there's a possibility of the big centralized companies who have existing user bases that are used to existing consumer behaviors, like buying an ebook on Amazon. They made the value of the blockchain for both creators and for consumers may decrease as sort of like the functionality becomes easier, because the big owners of the technology that are able to pour money into developing it will be able to recoup more of the costs because they have that existing user base. So that's my theory. And I'm bringing that up because I think that now more than ever is the time to make sure that people who were communities and underrepresented people who were left behind in Web 2 have this opportunity to build. We're still so early in the era of Web 3 that now is the time to get in. And I think Natasha hit on something that's really important also, which is like diving in. I have found that the Web3 community has been so welcoming and accepting and like willing to help others learn. It's been so incredible. There's so little gatekeeping that happens. And so like, if you can put yourself ahead by sort of learning now and like understanding that lexicon that maybe will fade away in the future, you can sort of ensure that people who identify like you do or other communities, you can bring them along with you. Because I think that there was a lot of people left behind in Web 2. And I don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah. It's definitely sort of a interesting, when things become really easy and intuitive to use, it's just mass adoption. Everyone starts using them. And like you mentioned, like we're still so early, relatively speaking. Everyone, they see the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and a lot of beginners and people that have never learned about crypto think that they've missed the boat and that there is nothing left for them to learn about or invest in if they're into investing. Because some people are just in the building, but we still have so much ahead of us. There's so much left to build, so much left to create for the world when it comes to Web3 and blockchain technology. A question again for Joe: what do you think are the benefits of early adoption, given that we're still early?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits I think is I kind of touched on this already, but I think a lot of what is built in the digital landscape today, like in Web 2, is catered towards certain groups of people. And I think like especially something that really resonates with me is this sort of use case for crypto that I've heard before, that as so I'm an American citizen. And as an American, I have this privilege of being able to travel like almost anywhere in the world and have access to my money, or the ability to get money from a bank. And that is an extreme privilege that is not shared by the majority of the world's population. And so I think that like the sooner that we adopt it as sort of like some people may not believe this, but I think Americans are typically sort of the leaders in the world's economy. And so like the earlier that we can adopt this, like I think the better it is for the world as a whole, or certain countries where where central banks are, extremely corrupt, and like where people are basically like, they don't have access to their capital because they can't get it from their cell phone. And so I think that it's like, I look at it more on the macro level, where it's like the more that we can help educate others and onboard people into Web3, sort of the better it is for society at large.
Awesome. Very well said. Natasha, question for you. How do you think there is a lack of gender/racial representation in Web3, and how can we overcome that?
Yeah, so why? Because the tradition is to leave us out of everything. That's kind of the why. So it's kind of going back to Joe's point, right? Where history is cyclical in nature. And what we're finding right now is we are yet again at another crux of a wealth generation opportunity that not many people know to take advantage of. And that's not because of anyone's fault. I think it's because of what naturally happens in this world of big wealth generation creation opportunities, where traditionally underrepresented and women, which also counts as underrepresented group, traditionally get left out of these things. So that's number one. Number two is that people who are building this economy in the very beginning times, in the very beginning, especially like blockchain, were very much heavily men. And I think as a result of that, that kind of shaped the culture of what blockchain is, and then fed into the culture of crypto, which then continued to feed into things. And I think what we're first time seeing with NFTs, I think, and with this kind of unlock and understanding of the creator economy, is a lot of women starting to really open their eyes to opportunities and wrapping their heads around what this means to create wealth and ownership, right? So I think what we've seen is a lot of history kind of halo into this new world. But what I am positively hopeful about is that we've hit this crux where women and underrepresented groups are realizing that the expertise and that your chops and everything that happens in this industry and this Web3 area is about the work that you put in and the value you bring as an individual. You can't necessarily rest on the laurels of other people when it comes into this Web3 world, which is why you see people partner up into DAOs and why people are organizing themselves around visions, missions, things that they're passionate around, right? Because people want to do things they want to do. And I think what we're seeing in this world of Web3 is that people are starting to, and at least in the underrepresented world, I think eyes are opening to the fact that there's an opportunity here, and more women particularly are starting to get involved and raise their hand a bit more. And I think that gives me some hope for what I think the future of Web3 is. And the more that we have discussions like this with women who are very focused on how we kind of educate and bring more people into this space, the better the industry will be. So I think a lot of it comes from tradition, but I'm hopeful that we're at this kind of trajectory where we want to change tradition, and a lot of the right powers that be, which basically are our underrepresented groups, are all getting together and finally making a stance that says, like, we do not want to be left behind. And in order not to be left behind, we're going to learn everything we need to and participate in this economy so that we don't get left behind. And I think that's what's happening. So you're starting to see these same people build tools for their people or their communities or the needs that, you know, each of these groups have, which is refreshing and needed because we're seeing a lot of these microsystems build up. And I think that that's what Web3 and even the world of NFTs, as it got a lot of press and media, both positive and negative. At the net, what it did was really cast a wide net to really put this economy on people's radar. And we're still at the very beginning. So the more that people start to get involved now, the better it will be, I think, for the long term and the longevity of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's pretty clear that there's a power structure within society, and then also within many industries, from traditional finance to, you know, now crypto, of course. And I think that while women and femme-identifying people and racial minorities are often underrepresented in many of these industries, crypto and blockchain is one that they are most underrepresented in. You know, a statistic I've seen recently is that 15% of crypto investors are women, and only 4% of blockchain professionals are women. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity for us to claim our stake in the space. follow-up question, Natasha. How can we all take part to make Web3 more inclusive for these populations?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mix of a few things. One is getting involved. So kind of raising your hand, getting involved, asking the questions and trying to figure this stuff out. It's not going away. So that's kind of also the bottom line. This isn't going anywhere. It's only going to get bigger. So you might as well get in now and try to figure out what's happening. So that's one way. And I think the other way is really kind of like continuing to think about what you can build for your people is probably another good way to think about it. And your people could be your family, your community, the group of people that you hang out with all the time and you guys have a real need, right? Like this could mean so many different things. But now we're kind of at this world where the tools exist for you to build what you need to build, and you don't have to be a developer to do those things. People have already built the stack and the tech stack that you need, and you just need the idea of what you want to use it for and how you adapt it. So we're at this world where you can really do anything, and you can find the people to help you do anything. And I encourage people to do that. And whether that is having conversations with people about ideas, getting involved in the right kind of groups or DAOs that help you kind of express these things, and really just also participating on crypto Twitter and the world of where these conversations are happening, right? Telegrams, Discords, etc. Like being involved in this community means a number of things, and it can look it can look all sorts of different ways, from as small as tweeting to as big as, you know, being a community manager for someone's organization or group, right? So there's so many opportunities for people to get involved, and I just encourage people to find out what you're interested in, try to figure out who's building it, and start hanging out with them and figuring out what's going on. And even those little touch points, I think, will go a long way in making Web3 more inclusive and definitely more diverse.
Yeah, those are some great points. You know, you don't even have to start your own blockchain project or DAO to get involved and to contribute. Literally all you need to do is like just learn about it and talk to people who are into it, and just spread the word to people in your communities and your circles. So one question before we move on to the audience questions and answers. Joe, what are some resources you'd recommend for folks to learn more and stay up to date with Web3? And I'm going to ask the same question to Natasha as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, as much as I personally have frustrations with Twitter, I think that crypto Twitter is actually a great place, to learn, because there's a lot of innovative, creative people like exploring different ideas on crypto Twitter. Other resources, there's a plethora of newsletters out there. I think some of the earlier projects, if you look at, you know, even like Coinbase, if you're looking at it from like the DeFi perspective, like most of these projects or companies have blogs, and a lot of them, if you sort of go back to their infancy, like they have sort of basic like breakdowns of sort of how blockchain works, and like, you know what, sorry, my dog's going a little crazy. And like also like most major projects, they release like white papers that sort of explain what they're doing and their mission. And the white paper that was written for Ethereum, one of the biggest blockchains, is actually only like 2 pages long, I think. So like there's all these sort of resources that you can look at and use to learn.
Yeah, definitely. That actually reminded me, one thing that I often recommend for people is to download the CoinMarketCap app. CoinGecko is another pretty much alternative to that. I use CoinMarketCap mostly. You know, you can research any cryptocurrency that's publicly released, and on a centralized exchange at least. And you can look at wallets, you can look at exchanges, you can do all the research that you need to do for any given project. Natasha, what are some resources that you'd recommend to folks to learn and stay up to date with Web3, especially beginners?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that there's no shortage of resources. So that's the first thing. I think there are a few ways to go about it. Crypto Twitter is wonderful because you'll find a lot of influencers who talk to their communities a lot. And I think you'll start to feel like, you know, the vibe of someone you like and that you trust for information. So that's one thing. I think the other is newsletters are really important. So the nature of crypto and Web3 is that it never sleeps, right? So we're on a 24/7 clock, global, borderless, everything, right? Which means you're going to miss something. There's no way you can keep tabs on everything. So finding the right newsletters that you enjoy are also really great. Forbes has a, I think it's actually called like Women of Forbes has a newsletter that they release every week that's specific to the crypto industry. There are some influencers that I follow, like Bitcoin Bombshell and some other women who are leading the space. Tanya Evans is another one. These are folks who are also professors at universities and also influencers. So you see a lot of expertise in this space. Newsletters and joining groups. So like I said, research, literally Google DAOs, and you're going to find a bunch of sites that list a bunch of different DAOs, and start playing around. Click on them, figure out what they're about, and join their groups and just learn. And I think as you start kind of like getting involved there a bit more, you'll be forced to learn certain things. And before you know it, you will be very immersed in Web3 more than you thought you would be.
Absolutely. So we're actually running a little bit early. Before we jump into questions, why don't we just go around and introduce the companies that were the startups, the organizations that we founded, and just talk a little bit about what they do. And I'll start with Natasha.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the VegaX side of things, we focus on basically two layers of things. We focus on creating the infrastructure, the technology that really helps traditional financial firms more easily enter into the crypto space. So what that means is this world of crypto and this world of traditional finance, it's going to have to merge. And it already has started this merge, right? But what this means is that everything that you see in traditional finance is going to have to be moved to Web3. What that looks like is what everyone is trying to figure out now, right? What does it mean when there's a Bitcoin ETF? What does it mean when all of your stocks are instantly traded on the blockchain and there's no longer this kind of like stock market as we know it, right? What does it mean when new tokenized assets are created every hour and some machine needs to be able to manage that in some kind of financial structured way? So there are all these new sets of problems that are being created that need to be addressed, and whether that is with, well, it has to be addressed with technology solutions. And that's what we're building at VegaX. How do we make that stuff easier? So that's one layer. And the second layer is for retail investors. So you own crypto and you don't know what to do next. By the grace of God, somehow you've ended up even on Coinbase and you were able to buy your Bitcoin. But now what do you do, right? So that's the other thing we help. We help people maximize their returns with easy to understand strategies. So what we're building is basically traditional structured products in the world of Web3 and crypto. So how do you make more returns on your Bitcoin versus just holding it in your wallet if you're not going to be an active trader, right? Which 90% of people are not. So what are you going to do to maximize your benefits? And that's what we're building at VegaX, the infrastructure and the tools to make it easier to operate and get the best returns as possible in this industry.
Awesome. And Joe, could you tell us a little bit about Nifty Lit and what you all do?
Sure, yeah, thanks. So Nifty Lit is very much a publishing company that leverages the blockchain and not the other way around. And that's sort of like, I think, an important distinction, because we're not a tech heavy company. We don't do any sort of our own like development or anything. We have partners for that. And so what we do is we've started with short form literary content that we pair with bespoke artwork. And we have a literary magazine, and we're sort of moving towards being able to publish, fuller length works. And we're really sort of, it's like a slow drip model where we're really sort of like converting like one traditional writer at a time to this idea that they could actually like earn on their short form literary content and also provide more value for their fans by publishing their work as NFTs. So the idea of the blockchain as this sort of used digital bookstore, for lack of a better term, where in the Web2 world, where you pay for an ebook and it sits on your reader device and there's not much else you can do with that, there's all sorts of additional utilities that you can unlock with works that are published as NFTs, whether that's like audio content or author readings or interviews. or even being able to like sell that book on the blockchain on this like used digital bookstore, for lack of a better term. So that's sort of what we do and where we're heading, and it's been really fun so far.
Awesome. So a little bit about CryptoFam real quick. I started this after I'd done some consulting for blockchain startups because my background is digital marketing. And a few years ago, my very first blockchain client was a DAO. It was called Opolis. So I learned all about Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the crypto stuff, because back in 3 years ago, I knew nothing about crypto except for the fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum existed, but I had never heard of a blockchain or a DAO or anything like that. And after working with them a few months, I was just quickly hooked. But I also realized that there was, such a small amount of representation of women in crypto and the blockchain space. So, I was kind of getting sick of this crypto bro culture with all these like dumb memes and like, hype about ridiculous things that didn't even like make sense. And I started CryptoFam almost a year ago. So our goal is just to be centered around education, make crypto and blockchain easy and accessible and interesting and fun and engaging for women, and not just people with the crypto bro mentality, not people who want to make money super fast, set realistic expectations and just be passionate about the long-term prospects of crypto. What you can create and how you can make the world a better place. So our goal is to launch the best crypto education program in the world, make it addicting, kind of like when you play Candy Crush on your phone, it releases dopamine. So we're gonna make a program where you learn about crypto, but it's also sort of like a game. It's fun and interesting. And with that, I'm gonna move on to the audience questions. So the very first question from Cindy Lamar: what is a smart contract? And I'm going to let Natasha, or actually I'm going to let Joe answer that, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so I think of it in terms of utility. So like one thing that I think is a very like contract heavy ecosystem is like the housing industry, right? And so like when a house gets underwritten like for a mortgage, there's all these terms like pages and pages. And so that's like one industry that I think is ripe for revolution with blockchain. And I bring it up because you could do all of this on blockchain with smart contracts. And so a smart contract is as simple as like writing into the blockchain the terms and conditions of what you can do with that piece of like property or ownership, for lack of a better term. So like if I buy a house as an NFT, which has been done before, like that might actually come with all of this like extra utility that will get executed, like am I paying my mortgage on time? And then that might be paid in cryptocurrency on the blockchain, and the smart contract will automatically sort of execute all of the things that come with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with y'all's backgrounds and experience levels when assigning these questions, but this second question I kind of wanted to reserve for Natasha, since you mentioned DAOs earlier. From Shanice Brown: what would be the process to turn our platform into a DAO, and do we need a certain amount of users?
Got it. So the short answer is no, you don't need a certain amount of users. You could be a DAO, I guess, by yourself if you wanted to. That is probably not much fun, but you probably definitely want a group of people. So that's the first thing. The first step to creating a DAO is basically what's kind of known as a governance document. And what this means is it's a document that outlines what the DAO is and how it's supposed to operate. And this is where you usually have people involved, because it's usually a group of you that are going to make the draft of this documentation, share it with the rest of your DAO, and then you could do all sorts of things in terms of like voting, how you kind of confirm that certain areas are locked or whatever it is. So usually DAOs start with kind of like central governance document that really governs exactly how the DAO is supposed to be ran. There are quite a few organizations that have started that help people create and form DAOs. So that's one way to go about it again. Like I said, a lot of things in this world are being built in kind of like compartments so that people who don't code or people who are not going to build any smart contracts or anything like that can actually just pick something up and utilize it. So I think that you can lean on those organizations that are actually helping people create DAOs. But as you kind of look into them, it really starts with a central documentation and a central place for everybody to connect, whether that be Discord or Telegram or however you want to communicate. Those are kind of the first two steps, a governing document and then methods of communication. And as you attract more people, that's when you decide what other things are needed. Do you need a financial decision body? Do you need an operations body? Do you need a community management group of people that help kind of like actually manage all the people that have come into your DAO? There are all sorts of things. And they start to run like mini companies or mini organizations, which is why they have the name DAO. But I think that that's kind of a good way to get started. And even more, just jump in and find another DAO that's already established so that you can kind of learn from the things that they are doing and how they've grown and see what you can apply to your own if that's what you want to start.
Yeah, that's actually a much better answer than I could have given, honestly. And I've been researching DAOs heavily for CryptoFem. One misconception that a lot of people, especially beginners, have about DAOs though, is that they don't necessarily need to be tokenized, meaning they don't need to have a token. So it's possible to be a Web3 DAO and operate for, by and for your members without necessarily having a rewards token, a community or creator token, even a governance token. You can have your DAO, and then in the future, if it makes sense, tokenize it. But you never want to do that just for the sake of you should never choose to tokenize your DAO for the sake of the long-term financial prospects of that token. So back to Joe. How do creators market themselves for offerings, services, widgets, whatever they are behind? That might be a typo, but for Monica, how do creators market themselves for offerings, services, widgets?
Sure. Yeah, and this is pretty similar to like a later question about like getting eyes on NFT collections so that they'll sell. And I think I don't have a background in marketing, so it's I'm still sort of learning myself, but I think a lot of it sounds cliche, but a lot of it is built like around trust. And there have been so many sort of like NFTs and crypto don't necessarily have the best reputation, and not without good reason, because there's been a lot of scams and sort of rushes into the space, people trying to make a quick buck. And so I think that sort of the onset of regulation, and then also people more like questioning sort of what's behind the actual like project or creator, I think that's actually a good thing, because I think that we're going to sort of see like the more like legitimate use cases rise to the top. So I think building trust is in my purview, it's more important right now than sort of trying to like, they call it shilling, like shilling your artwork or whatever it is as an NFT. And I've found somebody from a partner company, they have, they call it their 5-to-1 shill ratio, which means for every one sort of tweet or marketing material that they do, or they're trying to sell their product, they do five educational pieces of content. And that's sort of what I've adopted. And it's sort of like, it's at risk of maybe going slower and like not maybe necessarily like gaining like too much sales traction too fast. But I think that's a good thing, because you want your followers to kind of stick with you. And it's so new, there's so much happening. It's such a fast-paced environment. I think like it's really about relationship development at this point. And then I guess in terms of channels, like I'm not on TikTok, but I hear that's sort of a big thing. And then Twitter is huge. Discord communities are huge also in the Web3 space.
Yeah, for someone without a background in marketing, you actually did really well with that question. I guess the definition of marketing fundamentally is changing the consumer's behaviors. So I think that you definitely hit it on the head with not overly promoting whatever product or services it is that you are offering. Building trust and, inspiring others to receive the help that you offer them, even if that be free and not paid for. So the next question I think would also be perfect for you, Joe. From Paige Whalen, what do you think about Web3 and the Substack platform? Any innovative ideas there? I recently started a weekly student-led newsletter and would be interested in hearing any advice on how to bridge the gap.
Sure. I think I would check out mirror.xyz is sort of, it's like similar to Medium for Web3, I think sort of similar to Substack as well. So there's like a plethora of new sort of on-chain newsletter and blogging solutions that are coming out. It doesn't necessarily have to be an NFT there's all sorts of these other like utilities that you can build around like on the blockchain that are sort of adjacent to like putting your newsletter or blog on the blockchain and then working off of like the more of like the tip model, which is kind of a Web2 model. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff coming out. I don't have like a tremendous background in like newsletters or anything, so I probably can't offer more than that.
Do you have any thoughts, Natasha, on that question?
Yeah, I think that it's really about kind of like associating yourself in the right places. And I think especially in a world where you're trying to bridge the gap, you kind of have to show up in two places, right? You have to show up at the places where you're trying to connect that gap, right? So I think especially, and that's the world that we operate in, right? Like connecting with the old and the new. And as a result, you kind of have to do double the work because you need to figure out how you properly communicate what's happening to those who are very traditional and very used to the way of traditional finance, and how you kind of communicate these new concepts. And at the same token, the folks who are building all the new concepts, you have to communicate why blowing everything up from traditional isn't necessarily the way, right? Or why certain things were created in a certain way so that we can kind of take the best of that and adapt it. So I think when it comes to kind of newsletter and communications, it's a lot about understanding who that target is and the level of experience that they're at. Because like we said, this industry continues to evolve so faster than we've ever seen anything move. So this world of understanding, meeting your people where they're at so that you can figure out what level of education you need to provide. And sometimes that might mean that there's a tiered approach based on the target of that newsletter or who you're trying to communicate with.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of, the perks of being as early as we are. There's not a whole lot of infrastructure that's already built out, to support all of this hashtag Web2 world problems. So next question from an anonymous attendee. I'll give this to you, Natasha. If we have an NFT collection minted, how do we actually get eyes on them so that they will sell? And I would like to caveat onto this that, if your NFT collection represents some tangible utility or value for, something you've created, then that's the place to start. But if it's just like a sort of collection that you want to hype up and make money with, then that's probably counterproductive. And I'm sure that's probably not what you have in mind. Natasha?
Correct on all accounts there. So the first way in is literally a combination of exactly what Natalie and Joe are saying, where it's this world of being authentic, right? Like if you're in it for the money grab, that's a whole different strategy and that's a whole different set of people, to be honest. That whole target is a different world and that still exists. And obviously that's not what we want to promote for the longevity of the industry, but some of that exists today. But as we see it and kind of this world of like, how do you get the eyes on it? It has to be about what is the authentic vision and mission of what you're trying to do with the NFT. Some of them that I have actually been a part of I bought in because of the charitable aspect of it, because it was donation based, or 15% of the proceeds were actually going to help women in Africa. 20% of the proceeds were going to be reutilized from any of the sales to provide education courses to certain women in a certain area of the world. So some of those NFT projects, I immediately was ready to be a part of, because it kind of connected with a passion of mine, and I understood what was going on. So that was kind of the best of both worlds. When you're thinking about some of these projects, it's really about kind of the utility and what it is that you hope to accomplish with the folks who are part of this new community, or the people who are holding your NFT. So part of it is that, because the more that you can kind of align what you're doing with a clear understanding of a mission, vision, or impact that people can wrap their heads around, the easier time you will have getting those eyes on your NFT. If it's just about a wonderful art project, you're going to have to likely add some more to that. Or you need to be associating yourself in the world of fine art NFTs, which again, in this world, a lot of it is about kind of diving in and understanding these different segments. Because maybe you can create that economy yourself, or maybe you can create that target. But some of it is really, really focusing on what's your goal? Can you get people to rally behind that? And do other people support that vision? And if the answer is yes, I think that you will have a lot easier time getting on the radar of those people who want to support and want to hold your NFT.
Awesome. Well, we have 5 minutes left. We didn't get to all of the questions, but I'm sure you can ask these questions to, the panelists in the future. With that being said, or on that note, let's start with Joe. What is some social media platform or place where attendees here tonight can follow you, or, learn about Nifty Lit, or check it out in some way?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so now's my turn to shill Nifty Lit, I guess. But our website is niftylit.io. We just launched our NFT marketplace, and we're sort of a Web 2.5 company. So it looks very much like a traditional literary magazine. It's not scary, I promise. It's very welcoming. And then we have a newsletter that you can sign up for at that site. We also have a Discord, which is linked to our website. And then we're on Twitter at NiftyLitMag. And yeah, so we're sort of like all over the place. I think the easiest way, like if you have questions for me, my email is joe@niftylit.io, jo@niftylit.io. Feel free to email me. And then also if you are inclined to, you can hop into our Discord and you can ask me, or any of my team members are on there throughout the day.
Awesome. And how about you, Natasha?
Yeah, so where can you find? We're everywhere. So vegaxholdings.com will get you to our main site. At vegaxholdings will get you to our Twitter, also our Instagram, vegaxholdings. You can find me on Twitter at BansiBans, BANSIBANS. That's my Twitter, and I welcome LinkedIn messages. So LinkedIn inbox, trying to connect and shooting me a note there is a great way to get me to answer questions and to connect. So I'd love to connect there. And 2 resources I wanted to share. One, the VegaX Holdings Medium page has a ton of content, both educational, easy to understand, and highbrow technical. So in a world where you want to kind of see this gambit of what's happening in the crypto meets fintech meets Web3 world, please check out VegaX Holdings Medium. And that newsletter that I mentioned is actually from fortune.com, and it's called The Broadsheet, BROADSHEET. It's a weekly newsletter that focuses on women moves in this kind of crypto space as well. So I like that newsletter, and that's another great thing I think for people to sign up for. But yes, please reach out to me via LinkedIn.
Awesome. For anyone who wants to learn more about CryptoFem or connect with me, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily. And for CryptoFem, it's just link.cryptofem.org/community. We are a Facebook group primarily, but we're going to have a Discord and other social channels in the future. Most of our membership is in Austin, Texas, because that's where we started. But we already have like small contingents of folks in New Zealand, Mexico, other states in the country, and even Europe. So the goal is to, get people educated, get people successful in crypto, either as investors or as founders of some sort. and then have people just organically, start local chapters in their cities. And with that being said, thank you to everyone who attended tonight. I hope that you learned something new, and I hope that you have a great rest of your night. And thanks to StartOut and to Digital Undivided for making this panel possible.